Okay. Well, why don't you pass the mic down to Cindy? And we need to get our Kleenexes out here just a little bit, I'm afraid. Yeah, this has been an interesting season of missions for you, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. It's been an absolutely wonderful summer.
In what sense? What has led to that wonderfulness?
It's been 6 years since I've had to come up here or gotten to come up here, depending upon how you look at it. God said no, no, no every year to going back overseas for missions. And this year he said yes to Cambodia. And then he said yes to Canada. And then he said, I want you to go to Savannah, Georgia with Beautiful Feet, with their youth, and ride on a school bus. And it was like, there's been nothing for 6 years. And then it's like, I'm 6 years older, y'all. I mean, I'm older. And there was that fear of, am I hearing you? Am I hearing wrong? You want me to do 5 weeks and then come back and get to, help with Adventure Week 2, but he gave me the strength that I needed. He gave me the energy, the joy, everywhere I saw why he wanted me to go, I saw what he wanted me to get. It's like the best place to be is where he wants you to be, and to totally be relying upon him, because honestly, at 54, that's a lot for me, and I had to pray constantly, give me the strength, give me the energy, let me do what you want me to do. So it was wonderful. So
you're going to share just a word or two about your Cambodia portion of it. And same question, how did you see God at work? Just general reflections on that.
How did you see God work? It's been 6 years since I've been in Cambodia. I got to go 2 years in a row, and then 6 years. No, I saw huge changes. Just in the architecture, in the people. China has come in and done a lot there. Maybe not the best for the Cambodian people. What was the question? I'm sorry.
How God is at work. How you saw God's presence and his being at work.
Presence. In the city, you can feel the darkness, and by darkness I mean the evil, the lack of God. You can see it everywhere. There are spirit houses, little wood boxes that they paint, and it's covered in gold, that they leave the fruit, and they burn the incense. It's absolutely everywhere in the city and in the villages that you go to. The sex trafficking is huge over there. We all know that. So everywhere you look, you're bombarded with things that we don't see here in Aledo. You see a lot of evil. It is, that there's not people there that are loving the Lord, that know the Lord. Matter of fact, most of the people in the city have never heard about him. So, but when you go out to the villages, the new churches, this year we didn't go to the existing churches that all of us help support with our prayers and the money that we send on a monthly basis. We went to brand new churches, pastors that came to the last pastors conference, and we weren't monetarily supporting these churches, but we went, and there were 11 that we got to go to, and they're in the middle of nowhere. So in the middle of nowhere, one of the poorest churches that we went to, you're driving down, you knew they were poor. Their tiny little houses were not put together. They didn't all look the same. They were piecemealed. You might have some tin, you might have some wood, and there was not a tree in sight. And in Cambodia, it is oppressively hot. The humidity is stifling, and not one tree anywhere. So you knew that they were given the worst land. And we found out later that they were outcasts, which is why they had the worst land. And we went there, and in the middle of this is a little cinder block church. Well, the people from Korea, they come into the country, and God takes them to certain places, obviously, and they put a church up, but they don't come back. They don't share the word. They just build them a building. So that was the huge thing, that the joy when we go and we visit, and we got to share the bracelets. So we shared the gospel. We got to share 2 Bible stories with each church that we went to. You know, they worshiped, they prayed, we sang. There was lots of laughter, lots of encouragement. But when we asked too, have you heard this Bible story? Have you heard the story of the 10 Commandments? Have you heard the story of Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego? It was no. They hadn't heard. Even though they're brand new churches, they haven't heard the stories of the Bible. A lot of them can't read. And the Bibles that they did have, we would see, because I took some pictures of them, it would be one Bible that was falling apart that the pastor might use, and it was in a Ziploc bag, along with maybe a hymnal that when they would sing, the pages would fall out because they had used it so much. And it was just so huge to know that these are baby believers, you know, and in some cases, they've got people coming, just like we do here and everywhere else, that aren't believers. They wear these red Buddhist bracelets, you know, that they believe. It reminds them to be good, because if you're good, then when you're reincarnated, you move up, you know. So some of them aren't there. So by going and sharing the truth and knowing now that Kyle and Amy, they live there and they're following up with these churches. So it's not just us coming in and sharing and then going away, or building a building and never returning. Kyle and Amy go to these churches every month, and they're sharing the truth, and they're discipling these people, and they're growing in their faith. And that's why, I mean, what have we been doing this? Is it 10 years? About 10 years to Cambodia. We support, as a church, I think 24 churches. We went and saw 11 churches that we don't support, and I know that there's other ones there. So it's so exciting to go there and see God, through his Holy Spirit, what he's doing. You can see it growing. You see more and more people coming to know him. Whereas in the city, you feel that, oh, there's no hope. But when you go out to those churches, there's such huge hope, because there's hope with Jesus. When you share him, when you read his word, there's just such hope in him. And you can see it in their faces. You would want me to share the story about...
I was going to say, the last church that we visited on the last day, Billy shared what a joy it was to worship in a Portuguese service, not understanding the language, but just the Spirit of God. And this particular group, they were a little different because they sang several songs. And then, go ahead, take that point from
Yes, they did. We came up, and when you walk up, they didn't have a church building, so it was at their home, or a place that they rent. And they have, you know, like the big tarps that we have that you might cover a roof with. So they lay a tarp down on the ground and they take their shoes off, and that's church. So they're all sitting there, and this church did me in. It was the last church. And the way, there was a man and a couple of women, and I couldn't look at any others. They worshiped in a way that you knew without any doubt that they knew him, that they loved him, and that they depended upon him. I mean, the man, he was sitting down, his eyes were closed, and I hadn't seen as much of the, you know, like some of us may raise our hands to the Lord, and there was such a visible worship on him and love on his face. And then this woman and this other woman, but mainly this one woman with a green shirt, she sang so, she was grinning ear to ear, and it was just, you felt her heart in her words. Did not understand one single word that she was saying, but you knew that she loved him. And I am not a crier, but I think I sobbed all summer. And I lost it, and I was so embarrassed, because after they pray, after they worship, that's when we introduce ourselves. And I mean the ugly cry where, you know, I'm sobbing, and my group's just laughing, because it's like she's been doing this the whole time. But when it got to me, I just said, I'm so sorry, but I'm so moved by your love for the Lord, by your worship. And I was just spilling out my heart what they had done for me. And I look over, and she is just pouring tears, but grinning ear to ear, you know, and the lady next to her, you know, she's crying. And come to find out, the two that I was moved so much by, they were the pastor and his wife. And then the other lady who was crying, she actually was one of the ones who accepted Christ, you know, at that. But it was you felt his love, and you knew that there was hope there.
And that there's a value there that surpasses anything money can buy. I mean, if you ever have the opportunity to worship in another experience, in another language that you don't understand, don't run from it. Embrace it. And you'll see God moving, because you can't depend on your own language. You just depend on God. And that's a wonderful thing. We were all blessed at that particular church. Would you pass your mic down to Laura? We're going to come over here to Peru for a minute.